Six Flags has had a crazy week. We have even more roller coaster removal rumors. Six Flags also wants to build a 300-foot dive coaster, and we have even more news regarding Cedar Point's Top Thrill 2 and Siren's Curse. We have a whole lot to discuss, so without further ado, let's get started. Getting into our first news story, let's talk about Cedar Point. Because in a recent interview with WKYC Studios, Tony Clark confirmed that Siren's Curse was not originally intended to go to Cedar Point, which when you do take into account everything, it does make sense. So apparently Siren's Curse was originally intended to be built at Six Flags Mexico, but for whatever reason that could not happen. And of course, if there's ever an extra roller coaster, it's going to go to Cedar Point. And that would kind of explain the interesting timing behind all of this. We had pretty much zero rumors that anything was going to be coming to Cedar Point for 2026, and then pretty much out of nowhere Cedar Point just said, hey, we're going to be building a tilt coaster. So it kind of made a lot of us wonder, was this initially intended for somewhere else? And this definitely confirms our suspicions. I believe instead Six Flags Mexico did get a Vekoma family boomerang, which I think is definitely a solid addition to the park, and while it is no tilt coaster, it does kind of help make up for that loss. Oh, and on a side note, they still say that Top Thrill 2 will open opening day. However, I'm still pretty skeptical about this because we still have not heard that Cedar Point and Zamperla have a definitive fix for Top Thrill 2. And as I mentioned in a previous video, if we're less than 3 months away from opening day and we still do not have a solution for Top Thrill 2's trains, I just don't see Top Thrill 2 opening on time. So unless Cedar Point and Zamperla pull off a miracle, don't expect Top Thrill 2 to be ready for opening day. But they seem pretty confident about this, so we'll have to wait and see. And if you do want to stay up to date on all the latest theme park news and rumors, including this project, make sure to subscribe down below so you don't miss out. Next, we're going to be discussing some very interesting roller coaster removal rumors regarding the two Flight of Fear coasters at both Kings Island and Kings Dominion. So apparently, there are some rumors floating around that both Flight of Fears at Kings Island and Kings Dominion could be removed following the 2026 season. Which I must say, when I first heard about this, I was very surprised. Because for the Kings Island counterpart of Flight of Fear at least, it always has one of, if not the longest line of at the park, no matter what time of year it is. Like even on some of the emptiest days Kings Island has, this ride will have at least a half an hour wait, potentially even more. And I've seen it as high as 3 hours long during Halloween Haunt. It's safe to say that this coaster is very popular, and there are a couple of good reasons for it. A, it's an indoor coaster, and you know, those are pretty cool. And B, of course, it is air conditioned inside. And when it's 90 degrees outside, nothing feels better than a nice air-conditioned queue. Now, also, part of this lines is because both Flight of Fear coasters have pretty horrendous capacity. We're talking 2 trains of 20 riders, and when you take into account how the restraint systems were designed, the dispatches are unfortunately pretty bad. And by no means is it the ride operator's fault, it's just really a poor train design for efficiency. And is definitely part of the reason why the line is always so long. Now, when we did visit Kings Dominion, it was fairly busy, but Flight of Fear didn't really have that long of a line. Like, it was still a solid 20 minutes or so, but nowhere near the level of Kings Island's Flight of Fear's popularity. But even then, with just how many people Flight of Fear, at least at Kings Island, gets out of the regular roller coaster lines, I just don't see why Six Flags would want to remove this. Now that's just from like a base perspective of everything, but when we do get into the technical and like maintenance and cost perspective, then maybe this potential removal might make a little more sense. Because the Flight of Fear coasters likely cost a fair amount to maintain. They use older launch technology called LIMs, which use a lot of electricity, compared to more modern LSM launches found on newer coasters like Copperhead Strike. The launch system definitely does take a fair bit of power and could definitely cost Kings Island and Kings Dominion a fair amount of money too. You also have to do air conditioning for the building, and you know, it's an older coaster too, and it can make maintenance a bit more expensive. So look, I understand that the Flight of Fear clones are definitely a little bit more expensive than maybe Six Flags would like to maintain. However, I think the value that they provide for at least Kings Island in this case, but I believe most likely for Kings Dominion too, I really believe that the value these two coasters provide for their parks is worth the maintenance costs. And for Kings Island, I mean, if you removed Flight of Fear from Area 72, it would just feel so empty back there unless something took its place, and quickly too. I mean, they have this whole pretty well thought out storyline for both Orion and Flight of Fear, and to just kind of remove a piece of that puzzle and a good piece of that area too, as I said, it would just make it feel a lot more empty and less cohesive story per se back in that area. So I don't know, I thought this was really interesting, and if I'm being honest, I don't really think that these rumors are going to happen, at least at King's Island. I could see the King's Dominion Flight of Fury getting rethemed with the whole jungle expedition theme. I don't know how they could pull it off, but I definitely could see that. But for the King's Island Flight of Fury, I really just don't see it going anywhere, unless they have plans to replace Flight of Fear in the off season with another indoor roller coaster. And yes, we did get surveys about a year ago with an indoor roller coaster. It appeared to be like an Intamin straddle coaster maybe, or some sort of indoor family coaster that could be in the Flight of Fear building. But again, those are just surveys, and in that same survey, they also wanted to add 3,000 feet to the beast, so I'm not sure how much credit we can give these surveys. Anyways, I really hope these removals don't happen. Like I said, I do think these coasters are very valuable for their respective parks, but as with many things in the theme park world, we are going to have to wait and see. And if you are enjoying the video so far, make sure to drop a like down below. And now it is time to discuss by far the most insane news story of the week, because Six Flags has filed permits to add a 300-foot dive coaster to Six Flags Over Texas. Yeah, I'm pretty surprised too. So a couple of days ago, Fort Worth Urban found that Six Flags Over Texas had filed a permit for potentially a new attraction. And that attraction's listed height was 309 feet, which would classify this coaster as a Giga Coaster, which is pretty much any roller coaster with a drop or height of over 300 feet. And before anyone asks, yes, Orion is a Giga Coaster. And apparently this coaster will sit in the same plot of land as La Vibora, the removed bobsled coaster at Six Flags Over Texas. Looks like this coaster would be set to open in 2026, and all rumors are pointing to this coaster being a B&M dive coaster. Now, I don't know about you, but a 300-foot dive coaster sounds pretty insane. I mean, imagine looking over and like doing the whole dive coaster like hang element or whatever, and looking down at the ground 300 feet below you. I mean, that is going to be an absolutely insane experience. Now, dive coasters have never been my favorite, but I mean, if it's a 300-foot dive coaster, surely there's no way this isn't like a good ride. I mean, you're gonna have so much momentum and speed. Like, I really hope B&M can pull off a good, relatively fast-paced layout too. And this thing is going to be a huge crowd pleaser. Like, this is probably, as we know, dive coasters are super marketable and honestly just look really cool for the average theme park guest. Like, you immediately see a dive coaster and want to just go take a ride on it. And I think if Six Flags Over Texas is really trying to pull in as many people as physically possible, I think that this coaster was the best choice for that. I mean, it's a Giga Coaster, it's a sick looking dive coaster. I mean, if they add like a cool theme to it too, like that is perfect marketing right there. And I'm honestly really excited to see if this project does come to fruition and what this dive coaster layout in general would look like. Maybe B&M will even do something different for their first element. You know, instead of like an element, maybe a vertical loop or something.
Stop the cap.
Alright, probably not, but still. Now, a 300-foot dive coaster is insane and all, but this does kind of raise a few questions. Such as, well, Six Flags Fiesta Texas also has a dive coaster. And yes, I know Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger is a mini dive coaster, but they're still pretty much the exact same ride type, just the one at Over Texas is 100 feet taller. I don't know if that would necessarily be a problem, but it does kind of make you wonder, like, you know, Kings Island and Cedar Point typically try to avoid building similar attractions to each other to not really eat into the same market. And look, I know Texas has a ton of people in that whole metropolitan area and everything, but still, it's the same coaster type, just one's taller, and they're like pretty much within a couple hours of each other. Again, I don't know if that's really like a concern or problem for Six Flags, but it's definitely something to think about. And one thing to note is that they did file multiple permits too, with some having different heights. Like, for example, one ranging between 222 and 225 feet. So we might not actually get the 300-foot dive coaster. But to know there's even a possibility is still pretty darn cool. Of course, I'll keep you guys updated on everything mentioned in this video, including this really interesting project. And of course, if you do want to stay up to date, make sure you subscribe down below so you don't miss out on any more theme park news. Now, dive coasters are cool and all, but what about water rides? Because for some reason, water rides at theme parks have been slowly disappearing over these last couple of years. So what's really going on here? Well, if you do want to find out, check out the video on your screen right now, because it's actually really interesting. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your long weekend. I'll see you all in the next one.